Listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
Welcome back to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast. Today we have Will Walker, our recurring guest. Will is a YouTuber and a YouTuber that we like. We like his reviews. We like his ideas. We disagree with Will quite frequently, but that's one of the reasons we like to bring him on to this podcast to give us a little bit of a different flavor. And I think we felt it was only appropriate to bring Will onto this specific podcast because last year we broke down the Halloween franchise with Will, all the Halloween films from Halloween 78 to 2018. So it's only appropriate that he's back to continue that when we discuss Halloween Kills right now and just get into the spirit of Halloween because it's coming up. By the time you hear this podcast, it's going to be days away. So how's everybody doing today?
I'm excited. I enjoy talking about this this movie a lot. I think that I have a lot to say, and of course I have some nice festivities planned for the Halloween weekend. So
Okay,
I'm doing well.
Perfect. How you doing, Mike?
Cool. It's been kind of hectic this month, but getting through it. I ended up getting sick, and I'm just now getting over it. So that always sucks around your favorite holiday, getting sick. But I'm powering through it, and I also have some great festivities planned for Halloween. I'm going to go visit some horror film locations. I'm going to go see the Malignant house where Malignant was filmed, so that's going to be fun.
Okay, cool. So let's get started with Halloween Kills, the movie killing at the box office right now, by the way. And I expect it to make more money on Halloween.
Yeah, and of course, this one is a continuation of the 2018 Halloween, which was a direct sequel to the original 1978 Halloween. This one was again directed by David Gordon Green. Once again, written by Scott Teems, Danny McBride, and David Gordon Green. We got Jamie Lee Curtis returning as Laurie Strode, of course, and then Judy Greer and Andy Matichek return as Karen and Allison, her daughter and granddaughter. James Jude Courtney and Nick Castle both return as the Shape, and Will Patton returns as Officer Hawkins, and quite a great cast. And then Anthony Michael Hall, of course, as Tommy Doyle.
And of course, we also got Kyle Richards as Lindsay. And that's one of the cases where they got the original actress, not like the Anthony Michael Hall situation.
Yeah, and we went to see it on the big screen when it first came out, and I was disappointed in it, but James liked it. And then on the second viewing, it did get better for me. I liked it more on the second viewing, but the things that I didn't like were even more infuriating on the second viewing. But overall, I thought it's a fun but serious Halloween movie that can't decide if it wants to be serious or fun. The kills are great. Some of the imagery is really cool, and it felt like it was going to be a memorable film throughout, but it kept going off the rails for me. And but the question is, does it go off the rails too much?
And for me, the answer is no. So seeing it a second time, I actually had a similar reaction to you. The flaws stuck out more to me upon a second viewing, and things that bothered me only bothered me more. At the same time, the things that I liked about it became much more crystallized, and what I liked ultimately, I think, outweighs what I don't like about this movie. For one, I think it's a beautiful movie. I think it's one of the best looking Halloween films. And before this podcast, Will had looked up that this was actually shot in September. So it's one of the only, aside from Halloween 6, I believe, it is one of only 2 Halloween movies that was actually shot around the time it's supposed to take place. And I think that lends it a certain type of look. I like the score. Obviously, John Carpenter returning to score it. I think this has really, really, really great kill scenes. I think they're very brutal. Some of them are creative. Michael Myers is very frightening in this. He's very unstoppable. He seems like a force of nature. And one of the things that I liked the victims in this one. I like the first couple that they, even though we don't spend very much time with them, I think they instantly seem pretty likable or relatable or like real people. And most of all, I love Big John and Little John. I think they're two of my favorite victims in horror movies in recent years. They're a lot of fun. And that's a sign of a good slasher movie to me, for all of the missteps and flaws that this has, to make you actually care about the people that are being stalked, to have some kind of, I don't know, connection to them, I think is what makes this a good slasher film. And I love the design of Michael Myers' mask in this one. I like the burnt look. It's a much more weathered look than we've ever seen in any of the Halloween films. I think Rob Zombie was kind of going for that. I think this achieves it a little bit better in terms of that burnt Michael Myers look. It's a technically really good movie. There are some flaws to this. I don't really understand the mob subplot, and it becomes even more confusing on a second viewing. So I'm like, so what is the message of this subplot? Is it that mob mentality is bad? Is it that it leads people to kill? I don't know what it is. It seems a little bit confused in that regard. I don't like the ending of this movie, and I liked it even less when I saw it a second time. I think it drives me crazy that they killed off so many important characters over a monologue. It just seems absolutely ridiculous. And I've read about the alternate ending that they had filmed for this. Apparently it's going to be on the Blu-ray. It sounds much more interesting than what was presented here.
You mentioned The Mask, and I did like The Mask, but when I watched it, when I watched the movie a second time, my wife Adina said that he looked like Mel Gibson, and now I can't unsee it.
I think that would be
I think I'd probably rather run into Michael than Mel Gibson, personally.
That's a great idea. I mean, the original one is a William Shatner mask, hollowed out and then just painted white, like more bland. I think that's a great idea. Somebody should do a Halloween parody, but have it be a Mel Gibson, like a Mad Max mask or something. Paint it white, darken the hair up. That would be a costume and mask. So that's pretty cool. Mel Gibson.
that would be scary.
It would be pretty funny. But yeah.
But speaking of Mask, that flashback with Hawkins, I thought a lot of the flashback was great. I love seeing the old Mask. I love the vintage style of it. But throughout the flashback, it felt uneven. Like you'd get this real cool vintage look, and then you get this real digital video look, and then it'd go back to the vintage look again. So that was a little uneven for me. And then the appearance of Loomis, I really liked it the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, it's atrocious.
Ooh.
Why did he need to go? First of all, why did he need to go around Michael? So think of this scenario. Michael is standing in front of the house with all the cops pointing their guns at him. Why would Loomis then go around Michael to go in his front door and urgently ask the cop if Michael killed anyone else? Who gives a fuck? Michael's standing right there. Why did he need to urgently learn whether Michael killed again or not?
Go on.
I'll just get out my sort of feelings on the film first, and then I'll kind of address that, because I did. I think I kind of had more of an idea why I did it the second time actually than the first, but I made it pretty well known last time that I'm not a fan of the 2018 film. If you enjoy it, more power to you. I really disliked it, and with this new one, originally I wasn't even going to see it, but a friend of mine helped me get an early viewing of it, and I thought, what the hell, since I wasn't paying for my own ticket, I might as well check it out, and I ended up really liking it. I think that it vastly improves on the first movie in a lot of ways visually. The first film, there wasn't a lot of color in it. It had this palette that I refer to as the sewer aesthetic, where it was just like very gray and brown and just very ugly and drab. This one has a lot more color. It has a lot of orange and red and blue that really shines through. And I think that's very important to like really get the colors of fall and autumn when you're doing a Halloween movie. You can definitely tell watching this that it was shot in autumn, and I think it makes a lot of difference for the atmosphere. I think the way that David Gordon Green has learned to shoot the mask is very impressive. We brought up how like the mask has like a very kind of like worn down quality to it because of how it was singed in the house fire. And there's a lot of shots in this film where there's almost like a skull like quality to the mask, the way that it's the way that it's lit, the way that it's shot in certain shadows. There's a very skeletal aspect to it, which I thought was really cool, and most of that hinged on the direction. I liked how the focus here was less on Laurie and her family, who honestly I found pretty just kind of not interesting and just kind of annoying, and more on the town of Haddonfield itself as the focus and the protagonist. I think it made it easier to kind of relate to the victims of the film. It just grounded it in a place of relatability a lot more for me. We don't get that much time with these new characters as was brought up earlier, but I think that we get enough time to sort of settle in with them and like them a lot. The kills in this were just absolutely brutal. There were like some scenes where I actually had to like look away from, and like there's a certain scene involving a glass pipe that gets snapped off that I could not I just could not take. I had to like look away from that. Like that's always been kind of a subconscious like fear of mine, because it is something that's like, you know, just sort of lying around in a lot of houses, and so to just see that come to life, it was just I couldn't take
I
it.
think
No.
I think that was the meanest kill of the movie. It felt the meanest to me.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
you see this cute old couple, they're flying a drone, and it seems almost unnecessarily that you make such a brutal set piece based around this couple, because you introduce them just enough to endear you to them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get brutally murdered, and then the woman, you know, she kind of waits for the kill.
Yeah.
And I noticed that in this movie, great kills, but horribly choreographed violence. Every kill, as good as they were and as brutal as they were, they felt staged. Almost every character stood there and wait for their deaths instead of realistically fighting back. The Cameron is the only one that I saw realistically fight back.
But in that scene,
Even the firefighters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Even
yeah.
like the firefighters, when they had like the power saw, and you know.
Yeah, that too, because the firefighters kind of gathered around them, and the rest of them he filmed it well enough where you couldn't see the other firefighters waiting in the wings, but they were. He would fight and he would kill one while the other ones are standing there waiting, and then the other one would step up and get his kill, and then the other one would step up and get his kill.
It was kind of a one-on-one like video gamey in a way. I can kind of see what you mean there.
I agree with this on that part with regards to the firefighters, but I am grateful that at least he doesn't pull a Christopher Nolan, which Christopher Nolan does in The Dark Knight Rises. That scene that drives me crazy when Batman and Catwoman are like fighting a bunch of goons on a rooftop, and the camera, you could see all of them standing and not doing nothing, and then waiting and coming in one at a time. It was like, at the very least, David Gordon Green had the decency to block it in a certain way that you couldn't see that. But yeah, I could definitely see that. With regards to the other kills being kind of staged, I think that goes to another point I was going to say. The first couple, the one that you're talking about, I think it's the lady was a little bit frightened. The guy was caught off guard because he just came from the side while he's screaming, "Call the police, there's a man in a monster mask," before he gets his head slammed over and over. For me, what
Yeah.
it's like is that lady was like terrified, and by the time she was neutralized with that glass pipe, I don't really think there was much fighting left to do except to like stand back in horror. As far as the stage scenes go, I think there is a staginess, but I think some of that's intentional. Michael Myers is almost, this is gonna sound dumb, but almost like the Martha Stewart of slasher villains. The
Yeah.
improvisation and the way that he sets things up. There's a touch of theatricality to what how Michael does his kills in this movie that I really, really, really love. Like, that makes me sound sadistic, but
No, I know what you mean. Like even like with the kids of the season of the witch masks,
yeah.
and how he sort of like staged those there. And I would say in terms of the staging of Michael and his kills, I would add that Michael has like such a larger than life presence here, and I think a lot of people are sort of reacting to him with like just a sense of just utter shock. Like he is just totally just larger than life and larger than a person in this. And um, going off of that, I really like how not only do they bring back Loomis, but like his presence in the film is almost like a larger than life symbol of hope and goodness for the people of Haddonfield. How he's able to sort of uh, like he's spoken of with such high esteem and such reverence. He's the motivation for, we see him as the motivation for several characters to rise up against Michael. Like it didn't feel like just like a throwaway cameo role to me. Like he felt like a sort of substantial part of the story of Haddonfield, and that's what I really appreciate about him coming back. On top of them getting some great makeup on a great actor. I think it was actually like a different voice and
It sounded close enough.
like
The first
physical
time
actor.
uh,
I think that it was like I might be wrong about that, but like I heard that it was like a different physical actor and like a different voice, and they like matched them together for like the perfect Loomis.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but as soon as I saw him in the movie again, I started to kind of get my hopes up that I was gonna like this a lot more than the 2018 film, because for me, and I said this on the Halloween video we did last year, but I think that Loomis is he is the main star of the Halloween films for me. Pleasance is Loomis. It's not Michael. It's not Laurie. It's this.
he's the
It's
most
this sort
constant
of
in the series. He's actually a lot more
yeah.
constant than Laurie Strode if you look at the entire history of the franchise. One of the things that I found interesting about this, and I had to go back and listen to an interview with like David Gordon Green talking about this. I know that this movie pretty much ignores all the sequels. Originally, when they were like first conceiving of Halloween 2018, they wanted to find a way to fit it in, like all of them in, but just decided it would be easier for them to like make their own story just to acknowledge the first one, which I was a fan of. But I don't think it's out of spite. I think that after two films, it's very clear that even though those events technically didn't take place in this universe, the filmmakers are very aware of the entire Halloween legacy and the series, and that's why there's different nods to it. Like I've heard some people say, if they hate those movies so much, then why do they keep making nods? I was like, I don't think that they hate those movies. I think that they were just going for something different. But I think there's like an acknowledgement to the entire history of the Halloween franchise, even the movies that are no longer canon or no longer exist in this timeline.
Yeah, this one felt it felt a lot more respectful to the legacy of those films to me. I really loved how they sort of pushed the film in the direction of Michael being this supernatural entity. I love later on the film how they hint that like he sort of gets stronger every time with every kill that he makes. It uh, it reminded me a lot of the theatrical cut of Halloween 6, like this whole movie, like the kills in it, the musical score, the fall atmosphere, even ending with like a ending with like an original song that like really gets you in the feeling of autumn. I don't know if you guys stayed past the credits, but there's a fantastic
Yeah,
ghost.
breaking up, Will. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just
There
saying
you go.
there's a fantastic ghost song in it called Hunter's Moon. It definitely felt a lot more reverent to the legacy of the sequels. And to answer your question from earlier, Mike, about Loomis asking if he killed again, I think that that has to do with the idea of him sort of transcending his humanity with each kill, and I think that's why he was worried if he killed another person.
And that makes total sense, but that's another problem I have with this movie. There's way too many instances like that where you have to do these mental gymnastics to realize, why is this happening? It happens so many times in the movie. I found myself trying to over-explain the movie because both times when I watched it, I was actively trying to like it.
Okay.
So I was trying to see these things, but
I didn't even catch it. I didn't catch it until the second time I watched it, so I don't blame you for not.
That makes sense. It makes more sense once you've heard the speech about him transcending. Now that brings me to another point where I want to get to something I don't like about this movie. I'm not really against that idea of Michael becoming like transcending or becoming more evil and more powerful. But there's something about the monologues, especially Laurie Strode's monologues. And it's funny, on the second viewing, it became very clear to me. Unlike you, Will, I really love Laurie Strode as a character. I didn't care for her in this movie, and it became more crystallized. I just wish she would shut the fuck up with all these speeches and these monologues about Michael Myers that go on. And I'm like, oh my God, like those scenes drag it to a halt. I think they're on the nose. I think some of the dialogue exchanges in the hospital just leave my head shaking. It is just poorly written exposition and explanations. And you don't need to recount it 10, 20 fucking times. Like one time was enough. We don't need to hear it explain over and over. He's the boogeyman. He transcends. And then to end with that damn speech that she gives over a bunch of characters just being killed very unceremoniously is annoying. There's like dialogue issues with this movie that really got on my nerves, and I think that's what became more clear to me on the second viewing. The dialogue needed 2 or 3 more passes before this went out. It's these weird ass monologues that just don't belong and bog the movie down. And for once, it's one of the few Halloween movies where I wanted to get away from Laurie Strode in the hospital setting. Like every time it came, I was like, okay, can we get back to Michael Myers and the victims and the townsfolk and everything? Like I've seen enough of this hospital shit. That's probably the most maddening aspect of the movie to me is the dialogue, the monologues, and that hospital that I just wanted to get away from every time we lingered there.
And I hope
the
they
dialogue
reached.
is rough. I will 100% agree. The dialogue in this movie is very rough. I had a similar problem with Laurie Strode's monologues in the last film, actually, and I felt like there were like actually there was a little bit less of those sort of monologues about those kind of like brooding, pretentious monologues about Michael in this film, but they're still here, and they're still just obnoxious and unneeded. So I will not fight you on that. The dialogue in this film is very forced and very rough, and it's a major problem.
Yeah, and we heard the monologues already in 2018, and even in 2018, as much as I like the 2018 film, those monologues were approaching too much then.
Mm-hmm.
So to double down on them in this one and make the monologue be the whole climax,
yeah,
I didn't get that at all.
I think it looks even sillier when you watch them back to back because they take place on one night. You're like, holy crap, did she deliver a lot of monologues about Michael in one day?
Yeah. And not just her, but like Tommy. Tommy had like a lot of monologues, I feel, or maybe it was just him saying like "evil dies tonight" like a lot, and I'm just kind of like grouping Those two together. Maybe.
And
Evil
and
dies
Hawk,
tonight.
Oh my god.
Hawkins is waxing poetic about Michael.
Yeah, Hawkins as well.
Yeah, I could have done without the waxing poetic because for one, all right, I understand if you remove yourself as a viewer, Michael Myers is sort of a mythical character, what he's become in the popular consciousness. But within the world, he is not that. He's an evil person. These people are speaking about him who are supposed to dislike him and fear him like fanboys. These are things
Yeah.
that you would see online that pans to like tributes to Michael. He transcends. He gets evil. He gets more evil. Like, you're supposed to not like this guy. You guys sound like you're fans or you're fond of it. And I mean, obviously David Gordon Green is a fan, and so is Danny McBride. And I think that's their fanboyness coming through and speaking through the characters when the characters should be batshit terrified and be like, no, he's evil. Fuck this guy. Let's kill him. We're gonna go. It's just these monologues seem so strange to me. I don't get it. It's probably the worst part of the movie. I do like the dialogue between the victims. Like I said earlier, I like Big John and Little John. I like that we spend you spend more time with them than you do the average victims, and that might seem unjustified. I don't think it is just because they're in the Michael Myers home, so that has significance and it has meaning. And
I totally agree.
I thought their deaths were good in the first one, but what really cinched it for me noticing it the second time, you notice how Michael posed their bodies. I didn't see this the first time. It's posed like one of the pictures in the room, like an Happier Times picture when they're like posed together,
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, when Little John has his head on Big John's lap, and he just basically recreates that picture and then plays one of their records, which is like a tender love song, which I imagine is a song that probably meant a lot to them as a couple. There's something very malicious and creepy in the staging of that, and that feels very true to me, to Michael Myers. I really like little touches that this movie does like that, the awareness of the type of killer that Michael Myers is, where Jason Voorhees is just brute force. He's not going to sit there and pose the victims in horrifying ways or do things that are psychologically. I think
Michael is more artistic about it.
Yeah,
and I think that lends itself a lot to this version.
Yeah, the sense of sadism that he has, it's that psychological awareness of when people discover these bodies of how truly horrified they're going to be because they're posed in macabre ways, the way that he sets them up in the swings and at the school and stuff like that. I really think that they understand how Michael performs. It feels very true to a lot of like the history of Halloween, or even the original one where he opens the door and he's just standing there for a long time with a cloak over, like pretending to be a ghost and not saying anything. Or how when Laurie in the original comes and discovers her friends, one of them is on the bed with a Judith Myers, like he sets up this thing for people to walk in and be freaked out by the macabre horror of it. And I really liked all of those little stage touches that Michael puts on it. It adds a sense of sadism and creepiness.
Yeah.
The part where he's
and it's all...
Yeah.
I also always viewed him as like sort of like Michael is kind of like a voyeuristic child at heart. And
evil child.
I like the way that he like organizes a lot of his victims. It's almost like a child kind of playing with their dolls.
Yeah,
in a way. And that was definitely a thought that I had with the Big John, Little John placement that he created. Like I think
that tender love song is the perfect touch to make it extra long, extra creepy.
And I love that song. I love that song, by the way. I actually grew up on that song. My parents played that song all the time growing up. So I love that. That was a good touch of it. And I too loved Big John and Little John. I thought the movie picked up a little bit and was more entertaining when they were on the screen. Big John was Scott MacArthur. He was in The Mick, and he was also in the Breaking Bad movie. I love that guy. I want to put him in a movie. And then Little John was Michael McDonald. He was on Mad TV. And I also thought it was...
Stewart on Mad TV?
Yeah, on Mad TV.
I remember that.
I also thought it was a funny touch that Big John grabbed a small knife and Little John grabbed a big knife.
Big John is the short one and Little John is the tall one.
Yeah. But I thought they were great comic relief, but also endearing characters who had reason to be in Michael's path, and their deaths were especially hard to watch in a good way. Because
they didn't even show the death for
Little John.
for Little John. So
yeah, but I thought the more serious the scene got, the less interesting it was, though, because once they got serious and the comic relief was gone, it was just this two separate guys just walking around the house with no suspense whatsoever. They were just kind of walking around the house waiting for Michael to jump out. But it was still a good scene. And then the pit stab, the stab in the armpit, that really hurt. And then, but I just didn't like the end of the kill, because Little John finds the love of his life dead and his killer standing there. So why does he say, "Michael, you've come home"? It just ruined a great scene.
I don't agree. I actually kind of like that touch, because I think it's the realization in his head that there's a part of him that brought this on himself by even choosing this as his home and this as his place to live, being aware of its history and what
couldn't he have said something else besides, "Michael, if you've come home"? Couldn't he have said something else that was a little less hokey?
No, I like the line. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I love that one.
I like the line. For me, I think it's dawned on him that what they did was come into a house that they should have never have come into, knowing its history. And him for like 1 second kind of like accepting, like, of course this is what would happen. Like, I should like.
Well, to me, his first reaction of his lover being dead wouldn't be concentrated on Michael. It would be, "My lover is dead."
It was.
That's what I think.
He was freaked out at first. He got on his knees and was crying over him, and he looked up and saw Michael just staring out the window. Which I also thought was creepy. There's something weird about Michael Myers, and I think this lends to this difficulty to understand. It's obvious that Michael knows the other guy is in the house and that he's crying over. There's no way he didn't hear him, but it's not until he acknowledges him and says the name Michael that he turns around and decides to kill him. Or when he walks up to Lonnie Lamb and like kind of like walks away. It doesn't make sense, to be honest. And I understand some people complain. It's like, well, if he killed the kid in the first one, why wouldn't he now? I think it lends to his incomprehensibility as a force that you don't really understand him fully. At least that's how that's how I saw it.
Yeah, that's sort of how I saw it as well.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of the new Tommy Doyle? Because for me, I like Anthony Michael Hall for this version of the character, but I found the character himself a lot less interesting than Paul Rudd's version. And that's pretty much on the writing and less to do with the acting. Like with Paul Rudd's version, he's this pagan single dad, this social outcast with a lot of this sort of like a weird cryptic knowledge, this kind of just like strange obsessive outsider who's really into like witchcraft and magic and all this stuff. And with the with Anthony Michael Hall's, he basically came off like a sort of like a varsity team captain, like a lot, which is fine. And I mean, I like the character, but it's also very one note and not that interesting. I feel like we kind of got the most out of that character that we could from this movie. Whereas with Paul Rudd's Tommy Doyle, like watching him, like, you know, with all the candles in his house and all the websites that he has about like paganism and witchcraft and like his cross and everything, I could easily watch. I feel like I can easily watch many more movies about that character. I want to learn more about him. With Anthony Michael Hall, it's a fine character, but I mean, it's very one note. He is an apex predator.
Yeah, it felt like he was reprising his role from Edward Scissorhands. I don't know if you remember that. He played the bully.
Yeah.
He played the jock asshole in Edward Scissorhands.
He's a little more of just like a not as much a jock asshole, just a jock here.
Yeah,
but which I'm fine with.
He's a well-intentioned meathead. I have
Yeah,
feelings about Tommy
yeah.
Doyle. I think it's kind of disappointing that that's where they took the character. If I'm being perfectly honest, that's what he ended up as. On the other hand, there's a part of me that thinks that, well, in real life, there's no guaranteeing that Tommy would have grown up to being a person that you wanted him to be. He might have ended I don't think that's necessarily an unrealistic progression, but it's not one that I have chosen. And I will say Halloween 6 is and I'm not even a big fan of Halloween 6, but that version of Tommy Doyle actually makes a little bit more sense that he became that way than this version does. And I think he's well-intentioned, but I'm not going to say he's dumb. I don't think he's dumb, but he makes dumb decisions and he's very brash. And I think I don't know. I think he could have used a little bit more strategy in his planning.
It still doesn't make.
I'd say he's dumb, honestly.
Yeah,
I would say. I think
okay.
I think he's like a good guy, but I think he's definitely dumb.
Okay.
Like if you want to believe like, okay, this is how he developed, then it's okay to believe that. But it doesn't make sense that these other characters would keep confiding in him and keep trusting him to go after Michael. They keep looking at him as the saving grace. Tommy's going after Michael. Let's go help Tommy. He's our saving grace.
That's the part that I do find most realistic. Sadly, Michael, is that I'd have to say I do think that is realistic because that is partially how mob mentality works. All it takes is for one person to charge ahead stupidly, and then when you're full of fear and panic, do I think that those are good decisions? No,
but the characters who are supposed to be smarter than that are making these decisions, are going for him because he was cool at first. He even adds to the story. He even adds to the building of the atmosphere and the mythos of Michael. But he's way too uneven of a character. He goes from raging meathead to someone everyone relies on to get Michael, then back to a raging meathead, and then ultimately he's dumb because he makes really dumb decisions in the hospital, and then makes really dumb decisions right at the end. What was that lame swing at Michael where he's standing there watching him kill everyone?
Oh yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. That last 10 minutes, that scene, that's the one that plays over the monologue. That shit was dumb. I won't even debate that. That was stupid. I can't even say.
I thought that like the reason they followed him was because like he is a very charismatic personality and he seems like a likable guy that just everyone in Haddonfield seems to just kind of like know and
the kind of guy you'd want to have a beer with.
Exactly. Yeah, the kind of guy that you'd sort of want a beer with, hometown hero, all of that. And I think that I think that their liking of him as just a guy kind of kept him away from like sort of holding him accountable as a leader. In a way, which I think was one of the more interesting aspects of that character, especially when he ultimately ends up leading so many characters to their deaths.
Yeah, and after they were all just screaming in his face, he was going after that other patient that was a short, dumpy guy that they thought was Michael Myers for no apparent reason.
Yeah, they saw on the TV too.
Yeah,
they saw his face.
Yeah, and there were all these characters that were supposed to be relying on Tommy Doyle. They were screaming in his face, "It's not him! It's not him!" And he would rage and go past them. And then when the guy was about to jump, they kind of motioned to him, "It's not him!" And it's not.
I think to be fair, I think it was only like 3 or 4 people that said that like it wasn't him, versus like
it was the cops and Lori and Karen.
I don't think Lori.
All the main characters.
Does Lori say that?
Lori was screaming it the whole time. It's not him. It's not him.
Oh yeah, she's screaming on the side. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't understand. I really think that escaped mental patient who's scared. I don't really think much of that subplot works at all.
Way too much time taken up in the run time. It's all
And
a dumb sequence.
I think
I like that sequence actually.
Okay.
That was one of the highlights of the film for me. I think that, well, let me rephrase that. I liked that sequence. I think that the aftermath of it was extremely underwhelming. I liked the idea that the town's hatred of Michael sort of kind of sparks this kind of ableist hatred and rage to this sort of random mentally ill person. The fact that they saw Michael's face on TV is a plot hole, like just and that they went after this guy who looks nothing like him. But that aside, I like the idea that sort of this random mentally ill person sort of becomes like a victim of their wrath. Could be executed better, but I really like the idea thematically. The death, his death did get an emotional reaction out of me. What frustrated me the most, though, is that it has very little bearing on the rest of the story. Like I think Tommy's like, oh, I messed up, I made a mistake. And then Judy Greer's character is like, oh, are you just going to sit there hating yourself, or are you going to, like, stop Michael? And they're like, okay. And the film just kind of continues on as if nothing ever really happened. But on its own, I did like that subplot. I just felt that it should have carried more weight to the rest of the story and the development of the rest of the characters.
My thing with that is that I'm not against there being like that subplot being there, but if it was gonna be there, it needed to be handled a lot better than how it was handled, because I'm not sure, like, there's something hokey about it when not that he jumps and, like, after all the slashing we're supposed to be horrified at somebody jumping to their death. And I get what it's going for, but then Sheriff Brackett, after, he's like, he's turning us all into monsters. I just felt that it was so try hard. I don't know if that, like, oh, well, terrible, we've made it, like, it's just, there's something about it that I find vaguely hokey in its execution.
Yeah.
I think if you were gonna do that, I think they should have, or I don't know, something different, orchestrated it better.
I think what they were going for in that entire sequence was done in a much more subtle way, in a much more effective way in the first film. What they were going for is the mob mentality, like the fear that Michael Myers is striking into everybody is driving everybody a little crazy. They did that in the original. You remember when that guy was walking in a Michael Myers mask and they fucking ran his ass over and fucking obliterated
I think that's Halloween
him?
2. I thought that was isn't that like Halloween 2, where it's like the guy in the it's the wrong Michael Myers mask, and like the car hits him and Loomis flips out. I think it's like the beginning of Halloween 2.
Yeah, that's when Dr. Loomis is shouting at Ben Tramer, who's wearing a similar mask to Michael's, and he gets scared and runs off, and then he gets hit and his corpse burns. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what they were going for in this whole scene with the mental patient, and that was done much better. Yeah. And they took up way a lot more runtime with it too, and it was just needless.
And and it's just, I forgot what Laurie said about it after, but she said something dumb. I don't know. Overall, I have to just say that the hospital stuff and everything with Laurie was annoying. Even that scene, it wasn't comical to me the first time, but there was something campy about the scene where Laurie's about to shoot herself up with whatever. We don't even know. The movie never even tells us what she's shooting herself up with, to be honest. But
adrenaline. I think we can assume it's like adrenaline.
Something
it's always
like
adrenaline.
That. Yeah, but she's when her daughter Karen is like, and of course the white woman named Karen, but her daughter Karen was, you even know what it is? It's to take away the pain. I was like, I felt something vaguely campy about that scene. I don't know. It was funny.
The needle was that long, she plunged it all the way into her hip. that would have hit a bone.
Okay. Here's the other thing that bothers me, because this is something I always pay attention to if I'm ever going to get a shot, because I'm paranoid. You know how they have to flick the needle a little bit to get the air bubbles out? She didn't flick the needle. That pissed me off.
Yeah.
You know, that's just like a small detail, maybe in the whole thing of things, it doesn't matter, but you're supposed to flick the needle. And I think that bothered me. And then after the guy jumps, like, this is Michael's masterpiece. what he did is like another monologue about the
Yeah.
greatness of Michael, all this fanboy. Yeah, it's
The Michael's masterpiece got like a laugh out of me. Actually,
yeah, it's all
that did like
geeking out, and I was like, do you realize these characters who are supposed to hate him before, if I come across like they're geeking out about on him like a pop culture phenomenon, his masterpiece, driving the town insane. There's a reverence she has when she speaks about him, and she speaks about him being so pure evil and he needs to be destroyed, but at the same time she speaks about him with these lofty reverent tones that just seemed goofier on the second time. It's like, why do they talk about him like this? I can understand like people in the real like fans talking about Michael like this, but like people in the movie, no.
it makes me wish. It makes me miss Busta Rhymes calling Michael a killer shark in baggy ass overalls. That's the best thing I can say about this dialogue.
Yeah.
Well, I've been talking a lot of crap about this movie, so I'll go ahead and list my pros, the things I liked about it. As I said, the great kills, but I thought they were horribly choreographed, felt staged. It started out as a great continuation of the last film. It seemed like the same night for a while before it started getting weird for me. The whole firefighter scene was good. It's a great scene overall, a great violence. It felt dangerous. But I just didn't understand why Michael Myers hit that firefighter in the face, that first one, and he was laying on the ground, and then he did the head tilt. I thought that was a little overkill with the head tilt thing. That's not a head tilt scene. He didn't just do a creative kill he's admiring. He just smashed the guy's face in on the floor. And to stand in the middle of the fire and overkill. Anyway, I liked Big John and Little John. As I said, I liked everything about them. The victims found in the playground, as we mentioned before, with the Halloween 3 masks. Yes, it's a cheap nod to Part 3, but I thought it was somehow felt very cool and very ominous. Just the whole sequence leading into them finding them there and everything. I thought the lighting and everything was great. The atmosphere was cool. I liked it. The trick-or-treating brats who play tricks on Big John and Little John, I love those. They were a great touch. And Cameron's death sequence, I thought that was one of the best death sequences. With the Can I Have This Dance record playing in the background, looking for Michael, and he just appears, and it's a vicious attack. That's one of the best choreographed attacks I've seen in the whole movie.
It's also helped that he sees his dad dead before, like right before he gets attacked.
Yes.
It gives him a reason to be caught off guard, because for a second he looks like he's prepared. Realistically,
yes.
Why would he lose his like bearings when he looks so focused and prepared? It's because he saw the image of his dad massacred and just hanging there in a very grotesque, macabre way. So yeah, that was a cool little touch. I even like when he's coming down the stairs and she's like screaming at him, and he pauses and looks at him before breaking his neck. I was like, that's extra twist of sadism, because you could see that it's like driving her crazy. And it seems like he probably would have just left him there to suffer normally, but he could see how much it's bothering her. So he's like, oh, I'm going to do this little thing, and it's going to get her even more riled up and more like little.
Yeah, and even when she first comes out, when he's attacking Cameron, she hears the attack. So she comes out. And you remember how I said that she didn't put up much of a fight at all? Mm-hmm. It was a little better in the second watch, because that first time she fights him, she's caught off guard. She walks out. She hears something happening with Cameron. She walks out the door, and she's kind of caught off guard too. So she jumps to it and starts stabbing him in the stomach. I thought that was pretty cool. And then he knocks her down the stairs. And then that whole sequence, like you said, she seems like she thinks that she has him distracted enough, and he's gonna walk past Cameron and let him live. And then he doesn't, and it's just a whole tense situation. And then it's killed by the fact that after he kills Cameron, she stands there at the bottom of the stairs and just waits for him to slowly come down, and doesn't plan any kind of form of attack or anything, and just comes with her hand raised in the air, running towards him like an idiot. And it kind of killed that whole scene for me. It was such a great scene up until that part.
I get what you're saying, but I think in real life, when people are being attacked and they're in the heat of the moment, it's not very realistic that they would be strategizing at that level when you're just pumped by adrenaline and fear and confusion.
But we went through a whole 2018 movie setting the groundwork that Jamie Lee Curtis has been preparing them their whole lives and been obsessive about it. And then just for this person who had been, and plus she had gone through tricking him and everything in the last movie, and they did a lot of clever things to try to fight back with him, and nothing was done this time. Like I said, I like that first attack. She was caught off guard, starts stabbing him in the stomach, but all that time she had for him to walk down those steps slowly, and for her to stand there, just wait for him to get all the way up to her person, for her to it just didn't make sense for that character. It would have made sense for some dumb random character, but not her.
Maybe. I mean, I don't see as much problem with it though.
Because that for me is unforgivable. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that just bothered me on a personal level, just irked me, not necessarily a huge flaw. But when you take a character and you set her up as being smart and cunning and tough, especially if you just saw her go through a traumatic situation and she came out on top, and for her to, you know, attack him viciously at first, just to stand there and wait for him to come down, I just couldn't forgive that. It was just a character that you set up as being smart and cunning, doing something really dumb and cliche, something that you've seen in tons of horror films before, and seasoned horror fans and seasoned horror filmmakers know not to do that.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I try to put myself in that situation and seeing like somebody that you love stuck there and being afraid. Like I just think that there's a lot more that goes into that. And in all fairness, I don't think the granddaughter was that prepared. Like maybe the daughter was, you know, they set it up. She didn't have much of a relationship with her granddaughter like that. And her mom mostly kept her away. So I don't think she ever really had training like that, like the mom did.
But she didn't have to have training though. It would have been a simple common sense. You know, if you're going to stand there and wait for him to come to you, come to him. Try to take his feet out from under him when he's coming down the steps. If you're going to run at him, do it. Don't wait till he's overbearing, he's on top of you, and there's no way that knife was going to go anywhere near Michael. So she just should have had there could have been any sort of attack besides that one.
I found it realistic, personally. Personally, though, I think that's a realistic.
Okay, it's realistic when a huge guy is coming down the stairs with a knife. It's realistic for me to stand there. Oh, please don't come down and kill me, sir. Please, or at least run, get somebody. You know, something.
I don't think she wanted to run away because her boyfriend was right there with his head stuck in the middle of the thing. I think that's a very hard situation to be in.
He just turned his head all the way around though and broke it.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway.
I know. I think that's what makes the scene more effective because he sees that she's panicked and unsure of what to do, and him doing that only sets her panic and her mind off even further, and it makes her a little bit more hysterical.
It's just even my pros turn into cons with this movie.
Yeah.
But I'll go ahead and run through my cons real quick. Oh my God, there's a lot of them, so I'll run through them fast. Pretty much every mention of the boogeyman was lame, especially when young Lonnie fell on the sidewalk and he opens his eyes and the cops are there, and he asks the cops who it was. He looks at the camera, almost looks at the camera. The boogeyman. That was so horrible. The chance of evil dies tonight gets cringier every time.
Okay. Yeah.
It almost ruins the movie.
It's like a catchphrase that should have been on the poster, and the characters are aware that it's a catchphrase. There's too much awareness of like the pop culture of Michael Myers through this movie, if that makes sense, from people who should not be aware of him as a pop culture icon. But yeah. That's hokey, and it gets funnier as it goes along. The more they chant "Evil dies tonight," the more I'd be like, "Shut up. We know that this is not the last movie, so evil is not dying tonight. So don't repeat it 100 times." I could have like maybe once or twice would have been fine, but when it's very clear, we know going in that this is meant to set up Halloween Ends. Why are you going to keep repeating "Evil dies tonight"? I saw this meme that was funny. It's this Morgan Freeman meme, where it's like the picture of the mob shouting "Evil dies tonight," and underneath it says Morgan Freeman, "Evil did not die that night," or something. Evil, in fact, did not die that night. But yeah, those chants got a little old pretty quickly.
There was one problem that I had with the first viewing that got better on the second viewing. I thought it was a really ham-fisted twist the town going from in 2018. They were completely oblivious of Michael's evil, and they thought Laurie was crazy. And then literally just a few minutes later, they're completely consumed by fear. This got a little better on the second viewing, but I had to have it in my mind that that's what was happening. It wasn't clear throughout the runtime, throughout the storytelling, that that's what was happening. It was too ham-fisted, but it did get better on the second watch. Another thing that got better on the second watch was Laurie's condition going up and down. She goes from yelling and screaming in the back of the truck, let him burn, to then she's hurt really bad and she's in surgery. And then she's trying to get up and leave, and she's going down the hall and beating the shit out of some guy. But they could have added a little severity to her injury just with a couple lines of dialogue. They could have said, something like, your intestines almost fell out the last time you got up out of bed. Now you need to stay there. Something where it's more dire that she has to stay there and she can't get up, because in the last movie, she was completely obsessive about Michael being out there. She was completely obsessive about her family being in his path. And now all of a sudden at the end of this movie, both her daughter and her granddaughter are out there in Michael's path, and she just kicked back in her bed talking to Hawkins about Michael.
Monologuing.
But yeah.
I mean, that's one thing. I actually, if they were going to do this with Laurie Strode, then maybe we didn't need to spend as much time with her character in this movie if that's what they were going to do. It's almost like just because Jamie Lee Curtis is top billing and she's the star, she has to come in for these monologues to remind you of that. But I actually, really, her being in the hospital is fine, but I actually don't think the script is served very well by inserting her back into the story. It's not natural. It's not really naturalistic until the ending, when it's going to set up some kind of revenge. I imagine she's going to be even more determined after what he does to get back at her. So I don't really think the script benefits from her being in it so much, to be honest. It just seems extra. It just bogs down a lot of things, and that's where a lot of the problems lie, is heavily everything revolving around Jamie Lee Curtis is almost all flawed in my view. And I think that we could have had less of it. If you wanted to make this a little more natural, we could have cut her out a little bit more and just had her subdued. And then in the third one, have her come back, obviously after, I don't want to spoil what ends, but obviously she's going to want to go after him really hard this time. So I think we could have just did with less of her character. It was not organic to the rest of the script for her to be in it that much.
Especially if she had to stay in that hospital bed the whole time. You should have had much less of her on screen.
Yeah. And I never thought I would say that. We didn't need that much Laurie Strode in this movie.
I have work in 20 minutes, so I think I'm probably gonna have to just wrap this up just because I gotta get started.
All right.
Going there, but I'm glad that you guys found things to enjoy about it. Seems like James enjoyed it a little bit more, but I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm really excited for Halloween Ends. I like that they're kind of going more into supernatural territory with Michael. I like how they're focusing on more characters other than Laurie. I like how this film has much more color than we've seen in a Halloween film in a very long time. I'm very excited, and I'm just very I'm very glad that my suspicions about this one were proven wrong. I will gladly eat my words when I'm wrong about something, and I was wrong about I was wrong about this one not. I would and I'll acknowledge improvement where I see it, and I think this was a vast improvement on the 2018 film.
Okay. I still like the 2018 one, but I could see what you liked about this one. And like I said, I still enjoyed this. There's a lot of things that madden me about it, and there's a lot of things that just make my head spin, and there's so many things that I think could be trimmed and cut and rejiggered. But overall, I found it to be a pretty enjoyable and good-looking movie. I think it's one of the best-looking Halloween films.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Mr. Will.
All right, I will catch you later. Take
right.
care. It was great talking to both of you.
Great talking to you.
Have a
you
happy
too,
Halloween.
Happy
You
Halloween.
too. We mentioned the patient being mistaken for Michael Myers, that whole sequence and like that. And Karen, she does a whole lot of wandering. I noticed even more in the second viewing. She wanders around the hospital. She wanders around the town. She wanders around Michael's house. Way too convenient. And then Michael just wants to get to his house to look out his sister's window. That was stupid to me the first time I watched it. It pissed me off. This time, I was a little more. It made a little more sense. I thought it was poorly handled, but there was something kind of cool about it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the way they handled it, it felt as cheesy as making Laurie Michael's sister. It felt like that kind of twist, but it had something cool about it. Just him wanting to stand there and look at his reflection and look out at Haddonfield. There's something weird about it.
I think this is one of those, for that, what you're talking about, it's one of those cases where the script doesn't really seem to organically get to that place, that it just seems kind of wonky that is there. But at the same time, even though it doesn't make sense in terms of where this movie is going, it is creepy, and it does feel true to Michael Myers to just want to stand there and look and stare, because when you think about the original one, Dr. Loomis talks about how he just like sits there looking, staring, looking past the wall, or not really seeing the wall, but looking past it, not really sure what's going on in his head. So it makes sense and it doesn't make sense at the same time.
Yeah, and it even though it's dumb when you think about it, it's still kind of cool that Hawkins would say, it's not about you. He was always headed toward his house. That the doctor's the one that took Michael to Laurie's house in 2018. So it was never about her. There's something kind of cool about that. I don't know.
Well,
it
also returns Michael to the idea that he's the boogeyman and he's random. He doesn't have like, he doesn't have anything against anybody in particular. He's just evil. That's just who he is. So, I mean, if he saw a victim that escaped him 40 years ago in his path, of course he's going to go after. But I don't think that that's what his main goal would be, like breaking out is, I need to go get the one that slipped away or the one that got away or anything. Even though that was kind of my justification for it when I saw the original Halloween 2018, that she's like the victim that got away. I think I like now that it's not necessarily that. It's just that they were put in the paths. And it reminds you that Laurie Strode is not significant to his life like that. He's not his sister or anything like that. So that story, that kind of makes sense.
So I don't know. In the end, it ended up serving the story. I just didn't like the way they executed it. That's why it got better on the second one, because I could see what they were doing a little better. We also mentioned the plethora of cheesy lines. One of them was, Michael has haunted this town for 40 years. We hunt him down tonight. And there was a lot of lines that were almost just like that.
And they're
Evil
all
dies tonight. Yeah, evil dies tonight. We're gonna get him tonight. He's not gonna live through the night. So many lines like that.
You know what? If we could point down to like probably the biggest flaw in this movie, I think it would come down to the dialoguing and the monologuing. I think that's where this movie most blunders, is the things that come out of characters' mouths. Is, aside from the victims, strangely, the random victims, like, just his victims that come in his path, I don't get that at all. I thought all the even I forgot to mention the couple who are dressed up like nurses and everything, they all seem natural. It's weird. All the victims have much more naturalistic dialogue than the main characters do, the characters that are kind of central to the Halloween mythology. But the characters and the victims, that's why I think it's weird, because there's things about this as a Halloween film that bother me. But Michael Myers is still scary. He's still my Michael Myers. And it's effective, I think, as a slasher, because the victims, you don't spend too much amount of time with them, but I think you spend enough amount of time with them that they kind of endear you, that I kind of felt for most of his victims on a personal level. Not just, oh, that's horrifying, that must be scary just to have somebody attack you, but I got to like them a little bit before they each met their demise.
And it seems like the most minor characters are the ones that I like the most.
Yeah, it's Big John and Little John. It's the couple at the beginning, the old couple. It's the couple that's dressed up like nurses. It's even Marion. They did Marion dirty.
Yeah.
They did Marion
Yeah.
and Sheriff Brackett dirty in this movie. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not a fan of how they handled it, and I think those characters deserved better than what they got. Albeit the Marion scene is effective and it's brutal and it's horrifying. I still think she deserved better, but I can forgive that because it's such an effective horror scene, the way that it plays out and the brutality of it. But the end scene with Sheriff Brackett in the monologue and all that, that is just complete hokum and nonsense and does not work in any way at all. That ending is just, the ending of this is bad. Like, it's really bad.
Yeah.
The last 10 minutes
But-
are really does in a lot of this.
But that attack scene is really good though, where he gets on
Yeah.
top of the car.
Yeah.
That was really good.
That's why I can forgive it. I still think they did Marion dirty, but the fact that it's so expertly staged and the fact that it's almost traumatic. And when I first saw it, my heart was racing. I felt like the tension of what it would be like to be in a car with him on top like that.
Yeah.
He was going to come down. So it was effective, but we need justice for the 78 characters in the next one.
Exactly. And another thing I felt hokey about them going after that random mental patient in the hospital. At first, I didn't understand why Karen went to find him, because she was in there talking to her mother. She was worried about her daughter, and but the second time I watched it, I seen, okay, she really feels for this guy. She wants to try to save him. But why was she able to find him when the whole mob was combing the hospital, looking all over for him? Why was she able to go straight to where he was?
I mean, I don't think that makes sense, but I don't think it makes sense, but the only thing that could kind of make that make sense is maybe because she's the only one in there whose mind isn't feverish with mob mentality,
True.
that she's thinking a little bit more calmly and logically, where everybody else is just, yeah, he will die tonight, and like following the Smeat head around and like to his beck and call wherever he goes. Again, that still doesn't make sense that she found him so easily, but that's the closest I could think of.
And that's true, and that makes sense. But that reminds me of all the times, all the things that I liked about this, almost all the things. I had to sit there and do that and think, oh, well, instead of thinking it while I'm watching it, I had to think back on it. Well, it does make sense. You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to come to those revelations while I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And one flaw I thought was so tragic, and it's kind of way too convenient to set some really cool things in motion, but it didn't make any sense at all. Why in the hell did Cameron, his dad, and Allison figure out where Michael was? They figured out he was headed to his house. So why did they go to his house alone without calling even one person?
Especially when they had a whole mob that was ready to come after him, and they could have surrounded the house and burnt it to the ground or did something like that. Because that's what the requires of the movie, because there would be no Halloween ends.
Yeah.
It's a script.
And that was,
yeah.
and then that was followed by, where did Karen come from when Allison was being attacked? Think of the logistics. So she came with the mob. So did she come with the mob and they were 2 blocks away? So she walked by herself 2 blocks away to the Myers house and then led them back? It's too much mental gymnastics to try to explain why these things happened.
Yeah. Plot
That
control.
came off as hokey to me. Yeah. And then Karen gets to him and a pitchfork to Michael's back. Then one kick to his head. It was a nice little kick against the stairs. He got one pitchfork to his back and a kick to the back of his head. They know that this guy just survived a burning house. He survived being shot and everything. So she just stops right there and says, okay, that probably does it. So they let him get up.
I figured probably because she thinks that the mob would handle him better. A bunch of people attacking him because she already doesn't think that her daughter's capable and was like pissed off that Tommy was even telling her at the beginning. But it's one of those cases where like I think it makes sense, but like you said, it only makes sense when you think about it a little bit. Like it does make sense. I think that makes sense. But I agree, you shouldn't have to think about it that hard for it to make sense. It should click or flow. But yeah, I get what you mean. I think it does make sense, but we shouldn't have to like really think about it to that extent for it to make sense.
And the way it plays out, to me, just the way it plays out, it seems like She didn't tell the mob where she was going. That wasn't planned. The mob doesn't know he's there. She doesn't know. She gets a feeling now that he's there. So did she explain that to the mob? So why did she tell them to wait there while she walked 2 blocks? Why wouldn't they be waiting close? Why wouldn't they all go? Why wouldn't the whole mob go to the house?
See, that's a good question for David Gordon Green and Danny McBride.
Yeah. And
I don't know what to say to that.
the attack on Michael. Okay, the ambush was much cooler the second time watching it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the music. I love the reveal. Okay, it was cheesy when Karen looks at Michael and gotcha. Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it was a cool attack. The ambush was pretty damn cool. But over 20 people attack him with knives, bats, guns, irons. Michael is down. Karen leisurely picks up his knife, stabs him with a very shallow stab. She probably went into him about that much. Very shallow stab in the back. Most people disband and walk away and seem to turn their back on Michael.
Mm-hmm.
It's these horror film cliches that have been done in all these old cheesy movies, but those tropes we know what the tropes are now, and horror filmmakers know to avoid those now. So the fact that there was so many tropes shoehorned into this just pisses me off when I think back on it. And like I mentioned before, Tommy watching Michael kill everyone, and then steps up with this really weak, lame-ass swing and gets killed. And why does no one know that Michael has gotten up and killed everyone? How does Michael get back in his house? Why does Karen go upstairs before she knows it's over? Now, I get, especially after I talked about it with you, I get she was sitting there thinking, what is it about that? Yeah, that is where he's headed. He was headed back to his house. What is it about him standing in that window? I have to get up in that window too. But I don't understand. Why didn't she wait till Michael was dead? Why didn't she wait until something was finalized before she
probably
leaves her daughter?
I mean, I'm guessing she probably felt safe because the front of the lawn was filled with firefighters and police officers who were there at the scene.
But why did nobody know that? Like, so
you know why, Michael?
So basically,
because he's transcended. That's why he's killed so many people. He's supernatural now. He can sneak from behind and nobody's gonna. I don't know.
Yeah. So did most of the mob disband, and those were the last few people in the mob that he killed, and no one else was around to witness? That's all I can figure out.
He's transcended. Don't forget that. I don't know.
So,
I mean, yeah, what you're saying makes sense. It's weird because I like the scene and I don't like it at the same time too, because it makes sense that she would want to go up there and see what he sees. I can understand the impulse. It doesn't make sense that he's up there. I don't know how he got up there. Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I really couldn't tell you. I don't have an explanation for it.
Like, speaking about my problems with the movie, back to especially you and Will, who liked it more than I did. Speaking it out to you guys, a lot of my problems sounded frivolous to me as I was listening to myself saying them.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds frivolous because, yes, it's a slasher film. Everyone wants to see this cool Michael Myers character run around killing people in brutal ways. So why am I being so hard on it? It's because the Halloween franchise became something I didn't like. Mm-hmm. I didn't like it anymore in 4 and 5 and 6 and H2O. It was cheap slasher bullshit to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was always the originals that I liked more. So the fact that 2018 went back to the original, and at that same kind of tight filmmaking, that same type of atmospheric thing, the same type of having smart characters, and not too many things that are overly like cringe, and then to go all that the fun route with Halloween Kills, to have it be so overly serious at the same time. Like, if you're gonna go fun bloodbath, have the whole thing be fun. Don't be so deadly serious with everything. It makes me have higher expectations for it.
I think, I mean, I've also expressed this on social media. I don't really think this franchise lends itself to sequels. I don't. And I think that's why most of them suck, because it's the original one to me is a very elegant, slender movie. And I think part of its brilliance is its very straightforward simplicity done to me, which is to absolute perfection. The original one is just like a perfect film to me, that it doesn't even seem like it was meant to ever have a sequel. Like the way it ends, some people say it sets up a sequel because he walks away. I was like, I don't think that's what it's setting up. I think what it's suggesting at the end, you see him walk away and then the camera shows every place that he's been that night, and the breathing. It's just the idea that evil is present, always around and always lurking. I think that's good finality. I think to try to do it with Michael Myers, what makes him such a scary character is your lack of understanding who he is, that there's not really very much to do with the character. Like when you just, otherwise, if you want to just repeat the same formula, Michael comes out and it always has to be on Haddonfield on Halloween night. Or if you want to do something different, so you're not just repeating the formula, you could get down into these things like explaining him, which kind of demystifies him. Or the route that they went in this one, which is like, we can't just repeat what we did in 2018, because as it was almost like a reboot, a remake, and a sequel of Halloween all at once. It functions as a sequel. It's kind of a reboot that kick-starts it again. And what happens next, I could see that, well, we have to do something different, so let's make it a town's, like make it the whole town. And I think the more ambitious you get with this, the easier it is to trip up what you're doing. I think the fact that this is such a bigger story, there's more room for David Gordon Green and for Danny McBride to trip up as screenwriters and filmmakers, because it's going beyond what this is. And I think Halloween 2018 is a great sequel because it's organic. It's 40 years later. It seems a little bit more justified, where it's not just, oh, Michael Myers returns. It's no, 40 years have passed. Laurie Strode is grown into a different person over the years. You're revisiting her trauma and everything. And after that, I don't know what else. I'm looking forward to Halloween Ends, but I don't really know what to do with this franchise at this point, because I don't really think it lends itself to this many sequels. I think this is best served by simplistic, elegant stories, and I think that's why the first one and 2018 are so good, is they mirror each other in kind of ways, just these very straightforward slashers about the boogeyman, the presence of evil. And I think it gets harder when you're trying to, like, oh, now it's the whole town, or it's this or that. I think it's a really difficult franchise to get down. Jason is fun and goofy, and that lends itself to like sequels and fun summer camp slashers and everything. Chucky, a lot of what makes Chucky cool is not really that he's a mystery, it's his personality. So it's somebody that you could explore his background without demystifying him, because Chucky was never a boogeyman. He's just an evil serial killer. So I don't feel like anything, like the way the Chucky TV series is kind of, I don't know if you saw the last episode, but they're kind of exploring his background a little bit. I don't think he gets demystified. I think he's just, since he's such a simple archetype, that this is probably the most difficult franchise to make good sequels out of. And I think I'm a little bit lenient, because I know that it must be a challenge to try to follow up Halloween 2018. I still think the execution obviously could have been better, but I kind of feel like this franchise is a trap. And I think that we want to see more Michael Myers. We all do as horror fans. But we have to understand that comes at a price, with knowing that, okay, you want to see more Michael Myers, but you're going to either repeat the formula, or you're going to turn this into something big and convoluted, or the filmmakers are going to have to set up bigger, loftier goals that are easier to trip over.
Yeah, this could have been handled better with better filmmakers who were more seasoned in horror, I think.
But I think they did a great job
this
of Halloween 2018.
Yeah, but this is their trilogy, and they got approval. They got approval from John Carpenter, and plus they got approval by tons of fans. Mm-hmm. Tons of fans love this film, and they're going to see it multiple times. And there's plenty to love about it. But like even the people who love it are saying, you have to turn your brain off. Mm-hmm. No, thank you. I don't want to turn my brain off in a Halloween movie. No, I that's what they became, and that's what I don't like, and I don't like it becoming that way again. That being said, I'm still excited for Halloween Ends because I can't help but believe that the problems with part 2 is that number one, it was maybe too rushed, and number two, it was suffering from being a middle in a new trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
That it had to tell its own story while setting up the next one, and maybe it was too much set up for the next one. So I'm hoping this one. A lot of the problems I had of this was that it was a setup for something much more awesome to come.
I'm looking
I hope
forward to
so.
Halloween Ends. But let's hope Halloween ends. After Halloween ends, I don't think Michael Myers needs another set of 10 sequels, because I think it's inevitably going to start getting stupid. If you want to, like, if Halloween doesn't end after Halloween ends and they want to continue it, it's inevitably going to become dumb. And I don't think that's what
Yeah.
Halloween is or what Michael Myers is. It's like the one slasher franchise where I think the more sequels you make, the worse it gets. It doesn't need too many sequels. So I hope that they have like a good ending planned out. And I think okay, as much as I hate the ending of this movie, and I really hated the ending of this movie, it does give a good conflict setup for the next one. Like it does
Yeah.
end itself, and it does do that. As much as I don't like the way, I still think it could have been handled in a different way or much better, not over a
And,
10-minute monologue. But
and the next one is going to be a 4-year jump, right?
yeah, and you know, I'm glad, because it's not realistic to like have it so close and everything, and I think these stories are better served with the time jumps because it makes sequels more justified, like in the original one where time has passed 40 years. So a sequel to that seems a lot more organic than now. This one is just doing what Halloween 2 did. Let's just stretch out the same night and everything. So I think if it has to take place in the future, it can't be like right after. If you want to make this good, these stories need a little bit of time jumps in order for it to work.
And I bet you Allison will be a better character in this one, and I'll bet she'll fight against Michael Myers in a much better way.
Well, let's hope. She's had 4 years of preparation.
Because she's going to be pissed and twisted just like her grandma.
Her and her grandma are going to be badasses. And let's hope Jamie Lee Curtis gets to kick ass in this one, and she doesn't spend as much time monologuing like a fanboy about Michael Myers, because really that's what she was. She was there to voice fanboy love for Michael Myers. That's the way I look at that character. She's an avatar for fanboys to wax poetic about what Michael Myers is.
Yeah.
But I still think it's fun. I still think it's worth seeing. And there's a part of me that feels, as much as it's flawed, I still prefer this to all the other Halloween sequels. I'll take this over Halloween 4 or 5 or 6 or 2, or not 3. 3 is a different thing, but that's a whole different conversation. But I would still take it over the majority of sequels, just on the fact that I think that it's already, I don't know, it looks better than all the sequels. And I think the kills and the attacks are still more terrifying than in the other sequels, where to me his kills and attacks are bland and boring and don't really have any impact.
Something really weird about this movie for me, I borderline despised it first time I saw it. And then I thought back on some of the scenes and I liked it a little more, and I liked it even more when I watched it the second time. But the first time, as much as the problems that I had with it, I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was entertained. And then this time, even sitting there analyzing it and realizing, and outlining all the major problems I had with it, I still enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed it to my wife, Adina. She enjoyed it and she liked it a lot. Once we started talking about it, we didn't like the same parts. We were pissed off about the same parts, but we still enjoyed it. And I guess that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, that's why I can't complain too much, because as much as the flaws register with me, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't enjoy watching Michael Myers return and cause a rampage. Part of it is the fanboy in me, and there's a part of me that's just satisfied as like, at least this is the fucking shape, and these kill scenes are what they should be. This is how Michael Myers should come across when he's on a killing spree. The makeshift tools, the breaking of that light pipe, the posing of the victims, the theatricality. If there's one thing that I think that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride really get about the character, really get about the franchise, it's Michael Myers himself, and the nature of Michael Myers and his behavior and the type of killer he is, and what makes him so creepy as an entity or an individual or whatever you want to call him, the boogeyman. I think that for all their flubs on a lot of this movie, I think they get Michael Myers himself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I had hardly any problems with Michael Myers himself at all. It was
Yeah.
the way the victims fought back is what is the problem I had a problem with.
Yeah. But overall, I'm happy that this movie made as much money as it did and that it's killing at the box office because it's a sign that people love horror and it's not going anywhere. I mean, a lot of box office hits this year in the midst of the pandemic were horror films, and this is another one. And I'm just happy that horror is doing as well as it is. Even when I don't like horror movies, I'm still happy. And this one I did like, but I'm still happy when they perform well and they're successful because it shows the audience's appetite for these kinds of stories, and it ensures that we're going to see more horror.
And that's another great thing about it, because not only does it mean more mainstream horror films, which, all right, it isn't that much to get excited about, but it also means more indie horror films, because success in horror, no matter what level you're at, is success for all of the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
If a big huge movie like this or It or Halloween 2018 makes millions and millions of dollars at the box office, it trickles all the way down to the rest of us, and it makes the genre more popular for the rest of us to thrive in it and for more movies to be made.
Yep. So yeah, go check out Halloween Kills. I think it's worth a viewing. Bear in mind it is flawed, but I think it's a fun slasher movie, and I think it's effective when it needs to be effective.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this will also spawn a lot more reboots and resets of franchises.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Friday the 13th is next.
I forgot to tell you, I didn't mention, but last night I was watching I Know What You Did Last Summer out of some perverse.
I did too.
You did?
I watched the series, the first episode of the series.
No, I watched the original movie, because I got
Okay.
the Peacock subscription to rewatch Halloween Kills. Some perverse curiosity. I don't know why. I've never been a fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer, but I'm still not a fan of it. I still think it's a stupid movie. But it's the Scream thing. Like, it's like one of those cases where you got to take the good with the bad, because I feel like Scream is that film in the late 90s that revitalized the slasher and made it popular, but then it inspired a lot of stupid postmodern ironic teen white suburbia slashers, that Kevin Williamson thing. And that movie's just so stupid. I don't know. It's dumb. I think it has a great premise, but that's such a dumb movie. And I was watching, it's like, what is this shit? Like, why was this made? Who?
Yeah, when I put on the TV series, I said, if a killer comes out with galoshes and a hook, I'm out.
I think it's a damn shame, because the book that it's based on I read when I was a teenager is actually a pretty good horror book. I think I'm convinced that if you took that book and did it again and ignored the original movie, there's a good movie to be made out of the premise that I Know What You Did Last Summer.
The book is creepy.
Yeah.
And the series, I'll stick with it. It seems to be a little better than the movie as far as the characters and the way it plays out. It doesn't seem to be as much of a teen Scream. It seems much more personal, like the book, a personal story, like the book was.
It's like
But
Dawson's Creek with the slasher.
Yeah, but the series does have some musical breaks with like the kids in the clubs and listen to a lot of millennial type of music and with the cell phone culture and all that. But besides that, it's following the book closer. So I'll stick with it and see how it turns out.
Yeah.
I'm liking it better than the movie so far.
Okay, well, that's enough about Halloween Kills. We've talked about it long enough, I think. People need to go out and make up their own minds. But it is Halloween. It's Halloween coming up. So in celebration, Michael has a little information to share with you regarding the history of Halloween and some of the origins of this holiday that we'd love to celebrate every year.
And the history is out there for everybody to find out, but I thought I'd go over it briefly just for the people who don't know the origins of Halloween. There's some interesting things in the history of Halloween that comes up, and if you get a chance, check out the haunted history of Halloween. It's an A&E biography. It was on the History Channel.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in case you didn't know, Halloween began over 3,000 years ago. The Celts in Northern Ireland started it. It was an end of harvest celebration, and it was called Samhain or Samhain. so they believe that the dead returned. So you returned at the end of every harvest. So you must appease them, and you must lead them away from your home with customs and celebrations. They had blood sacrifices where they would sacrifice animals to the earth and to the gods to thank them for the harvest, so they would get another harvest the next summer. I thought it was interesting that the Druids would come, and they would sacrifice animals and then burn them, and then the Druids would come and read the burnt remains, and then people would gather while they were reading the burnt remains, and it would turn into like scary stories. So that's what became telling scary stories on Halloween. And then paganism clashed with Christianity, and then Halloween wasn't fun anymore. Christians looked at any other custom besides their own as evil. So they went on a major campaign, like major hierarchy of the church, gathering together, figuring out what they could do to destroy paganism and destroy this Samhain. But it was so popular that people wouldn't stop celebrating. So the Christians would demonize Samhain and try to create their own traditions. So they created like All Hallows Day, which was the day after Halloween, to try to pull people away from Halloween. So then Halloween became All Hallows Evening, because it was the night before All Hallows Day, and then that became All Hallows Eve, and then of course became Halloween. So our idea of Halloween isn't actually from the pagan roots; it's actually from the bastardization of Christians, demonizing Halloween. So that's where our Halloween came from.
And now Christians celebrate Halloween. I don't think it's like a problem. There's plenty of religious people who have fun on Halloween and dress up and do spooky things and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of interesting. I also think it's interesting that the bastardization of Halloween is actually kind of cool, because it shifts it more. It seems like it shifted more to horror film culture, which I can't complain about.
Christians made Halloween scary. And
they
on the documentary, they even showed a very interesting Christian haunted house on that documentary, where it's like you go into this one room and you see a woman having an abortion and she dies and goes to hell. And they had some pretty morbid setups, and it reminds me of the movie that I was shown in a Baptist church when I was younger, and they were trying to convert me and trying to get me to convert my family. So they showed me one of the most horrible horror films I've ever seen, of people, like a guy having a motorcycle crash and being decapitated and him waking up in hell. It was traumatizing. So they bastardized it and made it evil and made it bad, and then started pointing fingers saying it's evil because you made it evil. So the Christians created the scary witch and the black cat as myths. They created the myths just to demonize pagans.
And now we celebrate them.
Yeah. And then bats became known, synonymous with Halloween, because all the Halloween bonfires, like the bats would come, because the bonfires would attract mosquitoes and other bugs and stuff. So the bats would come to the fires and feed off the bugs and stuff. So that's why bats became synonymous with Halloween.
And I'm sure vampire lore only helps it. Yeah,
for sure. And then the Day of the Dead celebration rose up in Mexico, and that's actually a combination of the pagan religion and the Christian Halloween beliefs. So because when Protestants came along, they thought Halloween was evil because it was a pagan and a Christian holiday, and they didn't like pagans and they didn't like Christians. So then Mexicans came along and created Day of the Dead, and they realized, look, these pagan rituals and these pagan traditions aren't inherently evil, but we like the cool things that the Christians brought into it, so we're going to make it the Day of the Dead and make it this cool celebration for the ones that have passed on.
Interesting about Dia de los Muertos is that it takes like the aesthetics of Halloween, like the creepy, the spooky aesthetics and the skulls, with a certain type of reverent spirituality underneath it. So it's like scary aesthetics, but very positive spirituality, and like a celebration of the people we've had in our lives that passed. So it's an odd mixture, but I kind of like that.
So they made it a positive thing again, where it wasn't like a scary, evil thing.
But without getting rid of the creepy aesthetics, though.
Yeah. And then when America started coming up, then Virginia was the birthplace of American Halloween because they were the only colony that came over from Europe that embraced the pagan rituals. Everyone else thought, all the other colonies thought that they were evil. So they embraced the pagan rituals, and then so all of our current Halloween traditions stem from Virginia and come out this way. And then in the early 1900s, when people had more access to education, and we were thriving a little more, that's when adults started thinking that Halloween was beneath them. And it was taboo or something for an adult to celebrate Halloween. That's when we kind of pushed it down to it's a kid's holiday. So then when they made it a kid's holiday, the kids started creating too much mischief. So in all the cities across the US, on every Halloween, kids would use it to create mischief and vandalism and to destroy people's shit. So that's when cities across the US started making Halloween celebrations and Halloween carnivals and stuff to tame the kids so they wouldn't go out and create mischief. Because in Detroit, and I believe in the 70s and 80s, that's when Devil's Night came up. The Devil's Night that's shown in The Crow, that was actually a real thing, where groups of young people all over the city would burn, I think it was 40 to 50 buildings at a time.
Bunch of children of the corn running around.
Yeah, so when Devil's Night came about, that's when the rumors started. Rumors were deliberately started. There were razor blades and apples and poison candy, and because those were deliberately started to deter people from celebrating, because trying to deter Devil's Night. But what they found out is there was very, very few instances, like only 2 or 3 instances of razor blades and apples, 1 or 2 instances of children dying from poison candy. But in every one of those cases, it was the children's family that killed them, not strangers. So that whole rumor about razor blades and apples and poison candy is bullshit. So that's why Halloween became cute, because it was for kids. And that's why a lot of the imagery you saw on the Halloween decorations and things that were sold in stores had cuter faces. Everything was kid-like.
Cute
and
witches.
Now, if you notice,
cute witches and stuff like that, yeah.
And then if you notice in the last few years, like especially this year, I went in Home Depot this year, they have some scary Halloween decorations, dude. Big, huge Grim Reapers, gnarly looking skulls with big sickles and shit, and the things crawling up out of the ground. So it seems like Halloween is getting scary again, and it's become cool again for adults to celebrate it, especially with like some of the West Hollywood celebrations where they just block off a huge section of the street and just thousands and thousands of people pour into West Hollywood to celebrate. So I'm happy that Halloween has become full circle and become for adults again, and we're finally starting to realize that all this scary stuff that we indulge in Halloween is not evil. It's just scary and fun.
Yeah. I don't even think it's an adult's holiday. I think it's a holiday. I think it's a holiday for everyone. I think it's a kid's holiday because of the trick-or-treating and the candy, and I think it's an adult's holiday because it's a chance for adults to, party, get drunk, and also let out a side of themselves that they don't really, that society makes them oppress all the time. That we all have that we're all human beings. I mean, as much as you try to say it, we all have a proclivity for darkness in all of us, and I think it's better to express it in healthy ways and in celebrations and dressing up and going out. And I think that is just it's good. I think it's a mentally healthy thing for people to do, and I feel like it's an all ages holiday now. It's not just for kids or for adults, it's for everybody.
Well, Halloween started out 3,000 years ago as something so positive, something where there's so much darkness in the world and so much hardships and so much negativity. Let's have this celebration to purge that negativity, you know?
Yeah, and turn some of these scary images and ideas and folklore into fun, which is what horror movies do anyway. That's already what horror movies do, and I think that's cool that it's almost like a horror film holiday, because everybody I know, even people who don't watch horror movies, seem to want to, like, around Halloween season, people are like, who normally don't want to watch horror movies, really want to get in the spirit and watch a bunch of scary movies and stuff, indulge in things that they normally wouldn't.
And it's the one time of a year that we're normal.
But yeah, that's a pretty cool little history. That's a cool history. So yeah, Halloween.
I thought it was especially funny how Christians tried to create their own holidays to distract from Halloween. Ended up making it more popular.
They made it creepier, and now they've embraced it for the most part, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's our Halloween special. Have fun this Halloween. Just be safe out there. Don't drink and drive. I know there's accidents happen on Halloween just because people like to drink and get drunk. So please take your ride shares, take an Uber, take a Lyft. Don't drink and drive. Be careful. For the most part, trick-or-treating is safe, but just check your kids' candy, especially for the ones that you can unwrap. I'm not afraid of like the Hershey's or the Reese's and stuff like that because those are sealed. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt just to be checking on some of your kids' candy. Just have a fun time, stay safe, and have a blast.
You never
meant to be fun.
You never know when somebody's going to decide to perpetuate those myths. So be careful.
Yep. So it was a good podcast. So keep following us. Facebook.com/Pickles Horror Show. There are posts daily on there, whether it's the October Horror Subgenre Challenge, which we've been doing, or it's fun factoids, or even just some funny memes. I know we've been lagging on the Instagram. We'll get back to that. If you want to check out our defunct page, which we're going to have to revitalize, it's what is it again? I already forgot.
Instagram at Pickles Horror Show.
At Pickles Horror Show. And then check us out on TikTok, Horror Show Official, or at Horror Show Official if you're trying to tag us. Full of clips and highlights. Keep up with us. Like I said, if you've listened to the podcast, we have film productions in the works. We've done a TV show. We do podcasts. We have social media pages. We do a lot. So follow us on all forms of social media to keep up with us. As I say at the end of every podcast, click the flow code or copy and paste it because it will lead you to every platform that we're on.
And to celebrate Halloween, be sure to check out our Halloween short films called Embrace Your Monsters with Elliot. It's on our YouTube page and also on TikTok. So check out that one.
All right. Yep. So happy Halloween, folks. Until next week, happy horror.
Happy horror.